Welcome back. Today we will discuss one important genre of gymnosperms, that is Cycas, commonly known as Sago Palm. This genus will be covered in two parts. This is part 1. Our today's learning objectives are: we will discuss about its general introduction, then external morphology of Cycas and especially coralloid roots. Then we will discuss about the internal structures of root, stem, Rachis and leaflet in today's discussion. Then firstly, we will start with systematic position. So it belongs to division Gymnospermae, class is Cycaropsida, order is Cycadaceae, family Cycadaceae, and this genus, that is Cycas, is the only representative of this family Cycadaceae. So that's why this is also known as living fossil also. And the species that we will discuss about is revoluta, commonly known as Sago Palm. So let's start. So Cycas word is derived from a Greek word kaikos, which means cocoa palm. So ये जो word है derive किया गया है Greek word kaikos से, जिसका मतलब होता है cocoa palm, coconut के tree की तरह इसकी external appearance होती है. So that's why this is known as Cycas. So this is the photograph of Cycas. Mostly ये जो Cycas है, it is found in wild state in tropical and subtropical regions. So the region which are near to equator, वहाँ पे grow करता है. And this is the only genus of family Cycadaceae. Cycas is a perennial. Perennial means it can grow more than 2 years, that is up to 100 of years, and it is a very slow growing tree. Evergreen plant है ये, and it is referred as living fossil because it is the last representative of its group. In India, it is represented by 11 species. So some species are like Cycas beddomei, commonly known as Madras Cycas, Cycas circinalis, commonly known as Crozier Cycas, because ये जो Cycas circinalis है, इसमें जो leaves हैं, they show circinate venation, coiled venation. Then next is C.pectinata, commonly known as Nepal Cycas, then Cycas rumphii, known as Rumphius Cycas, Cycas revoluta, that is Sago Cycas or Sago Palm, and finally Cycas siamensis, commonly known as Siam Cycas. So these are some commonly occurring species in India. Its plant body is sporophyte, that is its main plant body is diploid, and this is the sporophytic plant body of Cycas. Mostly it is slow growing evergreen small trees and resembles angiosperm palms. जो angiospermic palm trees हैं, उनकी तरह इसकी external appearance होती है, just similar to that of coconut tree, and its average height is 3 to 5 meters. बहुत ज़्यादा लंबे इनकी length ज़्यादा नहीं होती है, and they are long lived with an average age of several hundred years. So they can grow up to several hundred years. And they also grow in xerophytic habitats, dry habitats में grow करते हैं. And plant consists of unbranched stem. इसमें जो stem है that we can see here, this is unbranched stem, and which bear a crown of large pinnately compound leaves at its apex. और ये जो stem है, इसके apex पे crown की तरह large pinnately compound leaves present होते हैं, and they also covers the apical region of this tree. And such habit is known as or termed as arborescent. Arborescent means tree-like habit. Next are roots. So to Cycas है, it bears two types of roots. One are normal roots, which are tap roots, और जो दूसरी roots हैं, they are coralloid roots. So two types of roots are there in Cycas. First is normal roots, and the primary root is normal tap root. Tap root means the root which arise from the radicle of the embryo. At seedling stage, जो roots होती हैं, they are much longer as compared to stem. At seedling stage में roots ज़्यादा लंबी होती हैं, and these grows into the soil and develops lateral branches. और ये जो roots हैं, they grow positively geotropic. They show positive geotropism, means अर्थ के अंदर की तरफ grow करती हैं, and they also develop lateral branches. Tap roots sometimes become thick as stem की तरह thickening भी show करती है. It means it also shows secondary growth. Then they are positively geotropic. जो roots होती हैं, they are positively geotropic, means they grow inside the soil surface and bear conical root caps at the apices. और जो रूट कैप्स हैं वो प्रोटेक्ट करती हैं apical region of roots. So this is the photograph which shows the normal taproot system of cycas, and this is the taproot system, and it grows positively. It shows positive geotropism, means it grows inside the earth's surface. Next are coralloid roots. ये जो roots हैं, they are special type of roots and they are negatively geotropic, also known as apogeotropic roots, means ये surface के ऊपर grow करती हैं. And these are some roots which gives the appearance of coral. और ये जो roots हैं ये बनती हैं by some bacterial, fungal and blue-green algae infection. So from the normal roots develop some small lateral apogeotropic branches near the ground surface. कुछ apogeotropic means जो soil के surface के बाहर आती हैं, ऐसी roots जो horizontally grow करती हैं soil surface पे. So these branches comes out of the soil surface near the ground surface, and the lateral roots gets infected with they gets infected with some bacteria, fungi as well as some algae, blue-green algae, जो infection cause करती हैं roots में. And the entry of these organisms is said to be responsible for the characteristic swollen knob-like or coral-like appearance. जो infection है by these organisms, this is responsible for this coral-like appearance, and hence these roots are known as coralloid roots or corallorhiza. इसलिए इन roots को coralloid roots कहा जाता है, and their main function is in nitrogen. And there are many investigations. They have shown that there is presence of some blue-green algae like nostoc punctiforme and anavina cycadaceae. That is, these both are blue-green algae. Then azobacter and bacillus redi cicola. So these are some bacteria which helps in nitrogen fixation. And these roots have minute pores which are known as lenticels and which are respiratory in function. Means they helps in gaseous exchange. And root caps and root hairs are absent in the coralloid roots. So ये जो roots हैं, in this region we can see here this greenish structure shows, this green color layer shows the algal zone in this coralloid root. Next comes stem. So stem in case of cycas is unbranched, और जो branching होती है इसमें, in this photograph you can see here, जो stem है it is unbranched, but under certain conditions, अगर इसमें कोई injury हो जाए या फिर कोई adventitious branch निकलती है, so at that case it bears some branches. Otherwise the stem is unbranched and bear a lot of leaf bases, leaf scars, which forms a protective covering around the stem. So it is a thick, erect, woody, aerial and usually unbranched, and this for this we use the term codex. And branching is rare, and it is, if there is branching, then it is due to some injury or due to development of some adventitious buds on the stem. And the surface of stem is rough, that we can see here. जो stem का surface है वो rough होता है, it is due to presence of persistent woody leaf bases. जो leaf bases हैं उनकी वजह से ये इसमें बाहर protective covering बनती है. And these leaf bases forms thick covering around the stem. And there are two types of leaf bases. एक large size के होते हैं and some are smaller size. जो large size के leaf bases है they are formed by foliage leaves. Means जो बड़ी compound leaves हैं उनसे बनते हैं large leaf bases, and the smaller leaf bases are of scaly leaves and megasporophylls, which bears the female gametes. So ये जो scaly leaves हैं और megasporophylls हैं, they forms the smaller leaf bases in the female plant, especially in the female plant. The leaf bases are spirally and compactly arranged with each other. जो arrangement है वो spiral होती है in leaf bases की, and the shoot apex of cycas is protected by a rosette of brown scale leaves. So जो tip है इसकी cycas की, इसमें brown color की leaves present होती हैं, scaly leaves, जो protective covering बनाती है in the growing region. Next comes leaves. So cycas bear two types of leaves, और इस तरह की जो foliage को हम dimorphic foliage भी कहा जाता है. So leaves are dimorphic. There is two types of leaves are there. One are scale leaves, other are foliage leaves. So first, both of these leaves forms crown at the top of the stem. Firstly, we'll discuss about the scale leaves. These are small, dry, brown, triangular structures with thick covering of brown hairs, जिसको कहा जाता है ramenta, and the term used for these brown hair covering is known as ramenta. And these leaves alternate with green foliage leaves. और ये alternate करती है, it means one is foliage leaf, other is scale leaf. Next foliage, then scale leaves. So this arrangement of these scale leaves is alternate with foliage leaves. These leaves protect the shoot apex and reproductive structures. So इनका जो function है, they helps in protection of shoot apex, that is growing region, and the reproductive structures. So this is the diagram, and this is the triangular structure of scale leaves, and it bears a lot of brownish color hairs which are known as ramenta. Next comes foliage leaves. These are large size pinnately compound leaves. So these are produced in a crown at the apex of stem. ये stem के apex में present होती हैं in the form of crown, according to some workers like Coulter and Chamberlain in 1910, that they observed that only one crown of foliage leaf is formed in a year. एक year में एक ही crown बनता है foliage leaf का. This was observed by Chamberlain and Coulter, while D.D. Pant in 1953 observed that there are formation of 2 crowns per year. D.D. पंत ने ऑब्जर्व किया कि एक ईयर में 2 क्राउन्स बनते हैं फॉलिएज लीव्स के इन साइकस सिरसिनालिस, विच इज नोन एज क्रोजियर साइकस. नेक्स्ट इज साइकस रिवोल्यूटा. साइकस रिवोल्यूटा में जो लीव्स होते हैं, दे आर 30 to 150 सेंटीमीटर लॉन्ग. 30 to 150 सेंटीमीटर लॉन्ग लीव्स होते हैं. सो दिस इज द लीफ ऑफ साइकस रिवोल्यूटा. एंड साइकस सिरसिनालिस, दे हैव leaves up to 270 centimeter long. So these are longer, and this is the photograph of Cycas circinalis. It shows circinate venation. It forms a crozier head-like structure. A single foliage leaf is pinnately compound, that we can see. जो leaf है वो bifurcate होता है small pinnas में. So this is pinnately compound, and this structure जिसके ऊपर leaves होते हैं, leaflets लगे होते हैं, this structure is known as Rachis. इस स्ट्रक्चर को रैकिस कहा जाता है. ईच लीफ हैज़ 80 to 100 पेयर्स ऑफ लीफलेट. सो ये जो पेयर्स हैं लीफलेट के, दे आर 80 to 100. एंड रैकिस इज स्पाइनी बिलो विद द शेडिंग लीफ बेस. सो दिस स्ट्रक्चर इज स्पाइनी, दैट वी कैन सी हियर. दिस इज नोन एज रैकिस. एंड ईच लीफलेट इज लेदरी इन टेक्सचर. जो लीफलेट है, एक लीफलेट, इट इज लेदरी इन टेक्सचर, एंड इट इज sessile, means it doesn't bear any sort of stalk-like structure or petiole-like structure. Sessile है, elongated है, ovate है, and lanceolate. Lanceolate means the shape of knife in shape, and has entire margin with acute apex. So इसका जो apex है, that is conical, sharp apex होता है इसका. And each pinna of leaflet contains a midrib. इसमें एक midrib present होता है हर पिन्ना में, without lateral veins. Lateral veins are absent. Next, we will discuss about the internal structures present in cycas. Firstly, we'll discuss about root. So, the internal structure of root is just similar to that of dicotyledonous root. It consists of outermost covering, which is epiblema or epidermis, covered by cuticle. Then it contains broad cortex, and innermost layer of cortex is endodermis. That is followed by 2 to 3 layers of pericycle. Then in the central portion, there is presence of vesicular bundle, which consists of xylem and phloem. So firstly, we'll discuss about its normal root. So its internal structure is exactly similar to that of dicot root. जैसे dicot root का internal structure होता है, वैसे ही इसका होता है. It is circular in outline and can be differentiated into epiblema, cortex, and vascular tissue. So firstly, the outermost covering, that is epiblema or epidermis. It is the outermost limiting layer and consists of single layer of thin-walled cell. Compactly arranged cell होते हैं, which are thin-walled, and some of the cell give rise to the root hairs. और कुछ एक इसमें से cells बनाते हैं root hairs. Then inner to epidermis is cortex. जो cortex है, ये एक broad zone है. It is made up of thin-walled parenchymatous cells. So in this region we can see here, so ये वाली जो broad zone है, this is known as cortex, made up of thin-walled cells. और ये जो cells होते हैं, they also contain starch grains and mucilage. जो innermost layer है cortex की, that will forms the endodermis, एंडोडर्मिस में प्रेजेंट होती हैं सम प्रोमिनेंट थिकनिंग जिनको कहा जाता है कैस्पेरियन थिकनिंग्स और स्ट्रिप्स, एंड इनर टू एंडोडर्मिस इज पेरिसाइकल. So cortex epiblema, that is the outermost epidermis, which is followed by a multi-layered zone of thin-walled parenchymatous cell जिसको कहा जाता है cortex, and it has numerous intercellular spaces. इसमें loosely arranged parenchymatous cells होते हैं. The cells of cortex are filled with starch. Starch store करते हैं ये cells. Some tannin cells, कुछ tannin store करते हैं. Then some are mucilage cell and sometimes ferrophytes, which contains the calcium oxalate crystals and are also present in the cortex. So ये कुछ केमिकल सब्सटेंसेस भी प्रेजेंट होते हैं कॉर्टेक्स के सेल्स में. नेक्स्ट लेयर इज एंडोडर्मिस. इट इज द innermost layer of cortex, and it forms the endodermis, which is characterized by the presence of prominent Casparian strips, which helps in the formation of watertight channel in the roots. Then endodermis is followed by multi-layered parenchymatous pericycle. So pericycle, it is endodermis is followed by the pericycle, which is multi-layered and it is parenchymatous in nature. Then comes vascular tissue. The vascular bundles हैं that are typical bundles which are similar to that of angiosperms. ये radial होती है इनकी arrangement, which is the characteristic feature of roots. और xylem की condition इसमें dioic होती है and exarch. Dioic means it has two arms. इसमें जो protoxylem है that faces towards periphery and metaxylem occupies the central position. So that is protoxylem is towards periphery and metaxylem is at the center. The protoxylem consists of spiral thickenings. जो protoxylem के tracheids हैं उनमें thickening spiral होती है, whereas in metaxylem the thickenings are scleriform, means ladder-like thickenings are present in case of metaxylem. Then vessels are absent in gymnosperms. So in this root vessels are also absent. Then protoxylem group alternates with the phloem cells. जो protoxylem है वो alternate करता है phloem cells के साथ, और phloem consists of sieve tubes and phloem parenchyma, whereas the companion cells are completely absent in case of cycas. Next comes secondary growth. Secondary growth is simply the growth in girth. जो diameter में increase होता है growth, so that growth is known as secondary growth. It occurs with the formation of cambium. दो तरह की cambiums बनते हैं during secondary growth. One is interfascicular cambium, means दो vascular bundles के बीच में cambium की strip बनती है, और vascular bundles इसमें open type होते हैं. It means vascular bundles के बीच में भी cambium present होता है, so that will form a complete ring of cambium. और वो जो ring होती है cambium की, that cuts secondary xylem towards inner side and secondary phloem towards outer side, whereas the primary phloem gets crushed by the formation of this secondary xylem and phloem. In the outer region of cortex, there are some cells which becomes meristematic and they will form the other type of cambium, जिसको कहा जाता है cork cambium. That cambium will cut the cork cells towards outer side and secondary cortex towards inner side. That really leads to the formation of this structure, which is known as periderm. So the mature normal root shows secondary growth on both lateral sides of the primary xylem. So that is due to the activity of lateral meristem. Along with the inner side of primary phloem, there develops cambium. The primary phloem है उसके अंदर की तरफ cambium present होता है, and it cuts off secondary phloem towards outer side and secondary xylem towards inner side. जो cambium बनता है वो cut करता है secondary phloem को बाहर की तरफ and secondary xylem towards inner side. So this is phloem जो कि बाहर की तरफ को बनता है and secondary xylem towards inner side. After some time, the cell of pericycle opposite to protoxylem strand also becomes meristematic. जो protoxylem के opposite side पे cells होते हैं वो meristematic बन जाते हैं and behave as cambium, and cutting phloem on the outer side and xylem towards inner side. और जो cambium है that cuts phloem towards outer side and xylem towards inner side. Next, a complete ring of cambium is formed. जो प्रोटोजाइलम के अपोजिट साइड में पेरिसाइकल के सेल्स हैं वो मेरिस्टेमेटिक हो जाते हैं, दे विल फॉर्म अ कंप्लीट रिंग ऑफ कैम्बियम. और ये जो कंप्लीट रिंग है कैम्बियम की, इट कट्स सेकेंडरी फ्लोएम टूवर्ड्स आउटर साइड and secondary xylem towards inner side. This forms a complete ring of secondary xylem and secondary phloem. So it gives rise to complete ring of secondary xylem on inner side and complete ring of secondary phloem on the outer side. And the primary phloem is crushed due to the course of development. जब secondary phloem बनता है तो जो primary phloem है वो crush हो जाता है, that is crushed, and simultaneously there is a formation of periderm in the outer region of cortex. So some cells in the outer region of cortex becomes meristematic and they behave as the cambium, which is known as cork cambium. ये जो cork cambium है, it cuts towards outer side the cork cells और अंदर की तरफ को ये बनाता है secondary cortex. So these three structures, which are cork cambium, cork and secondary cortex, they will form a structure which is known as periderm. So the cells of outermost layer of cortex becomes meristematic and also called as cork cambium, और इसे phallogen भी कहा जाता है, and start cutting cork cells which are commonly known as phallum on the outer side and secondary cortex which are parenchyma cells जिसको कि phalloderm भी कहा जाता है on the inner side, and these three structures give rise to the periderm. In the course of the formation of cork, the cells of epiblema are crushed. जैसे कॉर्क बनता है तो बाहर की जो एपीब्लेमा के सेल्स हैं वो भी क्रश हो जाते हैं. They get ruptured by the formation of cork cells. So this is all about the secondary growth in case of. Next comes coralloid roots. So these are some special type of roots which are found in cycas. These are inhibited by some blue-green algae or some bacteria जो कि नाइट्रोजन फिक्सेशन में हेल्प करता है. So it is similar to normal root, but it contains one additional layer in the cortex which is the algal zone inhibited by some blue-green algae, and that helps in the nitrogen fixation. So here its TS transverse section can be differentiated into epidermis, cortex and vascular tissue. First is epidermis or epiblema, that is the outermost covering which is made up of single layer cell. So in young root it is similar to the normal root. However, in old root the outermost tissue is periderm जो हमने डिस्कस किया था. It consists of 2 to 5 layers of dead cells. So this is again the transverse section of this coralloid root. It consists of 2 to 3 layers of this periderm followed by cortex, outer cortex. Then in the middle region it is occupied by the algal zone. Then inner to this is again the inner cortex, which consists of various cells which can store starch grains, tannins, and some store crystals of calcium oxalate. The next is cortex. So epiblema, this outermost region or periderm, is followed by this cortical region which is the outer cortex. Then middle cortex is also known as algal zone. Then comes the inner cortex. So the cortex is wider in comparison to the normal root. Cortex wide होती है इसमें normal root के comparison में. A greenish algal zone is present in almost middle of the cortex and divides it into outer cortex and inner cortex. So जो middle region है, this one, it is occupied by the blue-green algae, and this is the middle cortex. It consists of two types of cortex, that is outer cortex and inner cortex. The algal zone consists of loosely connected radially elongated thin-walled cells occupied by some blue-green algae like Anabena cycadaceae and Nostoc punctiforme and oscillatoria. So these are some blue-green algae which inhabit the root of cycas. And it is also inhibited by some bacteria like Azobacter, Pseudomonas radicicola, and some fungi. The main function of these roots is in nitrogen fixation, और इनका जो काम है coralloid roots का, ये nitrogen fixation में help करती है due to the presence of cyanophycean members like Anabena and Nostoc. And its endodermis is similar to the normal root. जैसे normal root में endodermis होती है वैसे ही इसमें present होती है. Next comes vascular tissue. So its vascular tissue consists of endodermis is followed by multi-layered pericycle. जैसा कि हमने normal root के केस में पढ़ा था, vascular bundles इसमें भी radial होते हैं. Radial vascular bundles are present, which are the characteristic feature of roots. Xylem इसमें triarch होता है, means 3 rays, 3 arms होती हैं. इसमें भी जो protoxylem है, that faces towards peripheral region, and central portion is occupied by the metaxylem. Secondary growth इसमें rare और absent होती है. Secondary growth is absent. No secondary xylem or secondary phloem are developed, although cork cambium is present. इसमें इंटरफेसिकुलर कैम्बियम नहीं बनता है, बट इसमें कॉर्क कैम्बियम बनता है, दैट रिजल्ट्स इन द फॉर्मेशन ऑफ द पेरिडर्म. Next comes stem. So the internal structure of stem is just similar to that of dicot stem. In this region we can see here it consists of outer wavy outline. जो epidermis है वो wavy है, entire नहीं है. Then it is followed by the cortex, and inner to this is the endodermis. Then comes pericycle, and finally the xylem and phloem, and inner to this is pith. So first outermost region is epidermis. It is the outermost layer made up of compactly arranged thick-walled cells. Epidermis is ruptured due to the presence of persistent leaf bases. जो epidermis है ये rupture हो जाती है due to presence of leaf bases. The cortex of cycas stem is a broad zone which is made up of parenchyma cells. So it forms the major portion of the stem. और ये बना होता है parenchyma cells से, which are filled with large number of starch grains and mucilage substance. So this starch grain are the source of sago starch. जो sago starch हमें मिलता है, so these starch grains are the source of that sago. So due to presence of large number of these starch grains, so this cycas revoluta is popularly known as sago palm because it is the source of sagos. It also contains the mucilaginous canals which are scattered in the cortex, and each mucilaginous canal is lined by many radially elongated epithelial cells और secretory cells जो secrete करते हैं mucilage को in mucilaginous canals. For example, this is canal, mucilaginous canal. इसके चारों तरफ radially elongated cells होते हैं जो secrete करते हैं mucus को in this canal, which secrete the mucus or mucilaginous substance है. In case of cycas young stem, endodermis is not distinct. Endodermis इसमें prominent नहीं होती. So this is the structure of TS of stem. It's the diagrammatic structure of this TS of stem. It consists of outermost layer which is covered by the leaf traces, and then comes the epidermis which is interrupted by these leaf traces or ruptured by these leaf traces. It is followed by the cortical or cortex region, and this cortex, inner to this cortex is the pericycle or endodermis is not distinct in this case. So vascular cylinder, like dicot stem, vascular cylinder consists of many conjoint, collateral, open and endark vascular bundles. Conjoint means xylem and phloem lies together. Then collateral, that is xylem and phloem are lateral to each other. Open means in between the xylem and phloem there is a ring of cambium. Then endark means the protoxylem faces toward the pith or center, and these bundles are arranged in the form of ring. And this stele is ectofloic siphonostele. Ecto means outer, floic means phloem. Phloem is towards outer side, xylem is towards inner side. Siphonostele means having a pith or cavity in the center of the vascular bundle. Then xylem consists of tracheids and vessel. Tracheids and xylem parenchyma vessels इसमें absent होते हैं. So vessels are absent in case of cycas stem. Outside the xylem there is a phloem, and it consists of sieve tube cells and phloem parenchyma. Here companion cells are absent. So in case of phloem, companion cells are absent. In case of xylem, vessels are absent. The xylem is separated from phloem with the help of primary cambium. So that's why this vascular bundle is known as open type of vascular bundle. The cells lying in between the vascular bundles are will form the medullary rays which are parenchymatous. और ये जो medullary rays हैं ये इसमें बहुत ज़्यादा बनती है. These are the parenchymatous rays and connects the pith with cortex. ये connect करती है pith को cortex के साथ. Next comes pith. It is the central region of the stem. It occupies the central portion of stem and made up of large number of parenchymatous cells जो कि rich होते हैं in the starch storing tissue, starch storage, and they are rich in starch, sago starch. A large number of mucilage canals are also present in the pith. So this central portion is pith. It is occupied by these cells, and these cells store starch and mucilage. Next comes leaf traces and girdle traces. जो साइकस का स्टेम है that shows some unique type of leaf traces. Leaf trace basically represents the vascular supply from the main stem. Steel जो main cylinder है, vascular cylinder है, वहाँ से जो leaf की supply जाती है उसे leaf trace कहा जाता है. So साइकस में peculiar तरह के leaf traces होते हैं जैसे कि girdle leaf trace है. So this is the diagram which shows these leaf traces. So ये सेंट्रल सिलेंडर है, वेस्कुलर सिलेंडर. इससे दो तरह की सप्लाई जाती हैं लीफ के लिए. वन इज़ दिस वन जिसे कहा जाता है डायरेक्ट लीफ ट्रेस, जो कि डायरेक्ट सप्लाई है, एंड वन इज़ फ्रॉम अपोजिट साइड ऑफ दिस डायरेक्ट लीफ ट्रेसेस फ्रॉम दिस पॉइंट. और ये जो लीफ ट्रेसेस हैं ये एनसर्कल करते हैं वेस्कुलर सिलेंडर को, and this is again the supply to leaf. So basically 4 supplies हैं leaf के लिए from the vascular cylinders, और जहाँ से ये लीफ की सप्लाई जाती हैं वेस्कुलर सिलेंडर से वहाँ पे एक गैप क्रिएट होता है, एंड दैट गैप इज नोन एज लीफ गैप. सो द लीफ ट्रेसेस आर स्कैटर्ड इन द कॉर्टेक्स. जो कॉर्टेक्स है वहाँ पे लीफ ट्रेसेस स्कैटर्ड होते हैं इन द स्टेम, एंड दे कॉन्स्टिट्यूट द वेस्कुलर टिश्यू ऑफ द लीव्स. ये बनाते हैं वेस्कुलर टिश्यू लीव्स के लिए, मीन्स ये वेस्कुलर सप्लाई है लीव्स के लिए फ्रॉम द मेन वेस्कुलर सिलेंडर. जो सेंट्रल मेन सिलेंडर है स्टेम का, वहाँ से जो लीफ के लिए सप्लाई आती है दैट इज द लीफ ट्रेसेस. और ईच लीफ रिसीव्स 4 ट्रेसेस. जो एक लीफ है उसके लिए 4 सप्लाईज होती हैं फ्रॉम द मेन वेस्कुलर सिलेंडर, 2 ऑफ विच आर डायरेक्ट ट्रेसेस. 2 डायरेक्ट ट्रेसेस हैं लाइक दिस वन, एंड 2 आर and other 2 are given from opposite side of the direct leaf traces, और 2 opposite direction से आती हैं direct leaf traces के. These 2 traces take around the main vascular cylinder. ये main vascular cylinder को cover करती हैं vascular supplies in the opposite direction through the cortex and then enter to the leaf base. और finally ये cortex से होते हुए enter करता है leaf base में, opposite side of the point of their origin. जहाँ से ये rise होते हैं वहाँ से opposite direction में enter करते हैं leaf में ये. And these leaf traces are known as in leaf traces को कहा जाता है girdle leaf traces और indirect traces, and these are the peculiar structure which are found in the cycas stem. So ये एक unique feature है cycas के stem का to having these 2 types of leaf traces. One is direct leaf trace and other is girdle traces in cycas. Next comes secondary growth. So जैसे हमने roots में secondary growth पढ़ा था वैसे ही stem में होता है. So इसमें एक condition होती है that is पॉलीजाइलिक कंडीशन. इसमें बहुत सारी वेस्कुलर बंडल्स की रिंग्स बनती हैं विद द कोर्स ऑफ डेवलपमेंट. एट फर्स्ट अ कंप्लीट रिंग ऑफ कैम्बियम इज फॉर्म्ड बाय द डेवलपमेंट ऑफ इंटरफेसिकुलर कैम्बियम इन बिटवीन द एडजेसेंट वेस्कुलर बंडल्स. सो जो 2 वेस्कुलर बंडल्स हैं उनके बीच में एक कैम्बियम रिंग बनती है. वेस्कुलर बंडल्स में ऑलरेडी कैम्बियम रिंग प्रेजेंट होती है. जो वेस्कुलर बंडल्स के अंदर कैम्बियम रिंग प्रेजेंट होती है उसको कहा जाता है इंट्राफेसिकुलर कैम्बियम, एंड the new ring which is formed in between the 2 vascular bundle, this is known as interfascicular cambium. Inter means in between 2. So both of these intrafascicular cambium as well as interfascicular cambium, they form the complete ring of cambium. और ये जो complete ring होती है cambium की, ये कट करती है बाहर की तरफ को secondary phloem और अंदर की तरफ को secondary xylem. So the cambium cuts off secondary xylem towards inner side and secondary phloem towards outer side. And tracheids consist of multi-seriate border pits. जो इसमें tracheids होते हैं उनमें border pits present होते हैं. They helps in exchange of material between the 2 vessels. Tracheids vessels इसमें absent होते हैं. These cambial rings is short-lived. जो cambium ring बनती है ये short-lived होती हैं, और नई cambium ring बनती है formed every year in the pericycle of cortex. और हर साल एक नई cambium ring बनती है. Due to presence of this successive cambium ring, इसमें जो vascular bundles हैं वो rings, alternate rings बनती हैं इसमें, and that condition is known as polyzylic condition. So wood formed by this method having more than 1 cambium ring is the polyzylic and monozylic condition. Monozylic means the wood which contains large amount of parenchyma instead of secondary xylem. इसमें जो monozylic wood होती है ये इसमें ज़्यादा अमाउंट में प्रेजेंट होता है पैरेन्काइमा एंड कट ऑफ द जाइलम, और जो सेकेंडरी जाइलम बनता है दैट इज़ वेरी लेस. सो दिस वुड इज़ नॉट दैट मच स्ट्रॉन्ग वुड, इट इज़ सॉफ्ट और स्पॉन्जी वुड ड्यू टू प्रेजेंस ऑफ दिस लार्ज अमाउंट ऑफ पेरेन्काइमा। और इस तरह की जो वुड होती है दैट इज नॉन एज मेनोजाइलिक वुड विच इज द कैरेक्टरिस्टिक फीचर ऑफ साइकस। सो अल्टरनेट ये कैम्बियम रिंग्स बनती हैं साइकस में ड्यूरिंग सेकेंडरी ग्रोथ इन एवरी ईयर। Next is Rachis. Rachis is the basal portion of compound leaf which bears the leaflets. So it is the basal part of leaf which bears the leaflets. And transverse section of this Rachis is rhomboidal in shape and it consists of following structures. First one is the epidermis. ये है outer covering which is made up of single layers. It consists of a single layer cells and it covers the thick. It is covered by a thick cuticle and has stomatas. Then it is followed by hypodermis. So epidermis is followed by hypodermis. It consists of outer 2-3 layers which are chlorenchymatous, means इसमें chlorophyll present होता है, and the inner 4 to 6 layers are sclerenchymatous, means made up of thick-walled dead cells. And this Rachis has unique type of vascular bundles arrangement that is inverted omega shaped. So this is the vascular bundles which are present in the inverted omega shaped structure. Next is ground tissue. It is the next to hypodermis and it is parenchymatous in nature. It is called ground tissue and in this region there are present many mucilaginous canals and vascular bundles. और ये जो टिश्यू है इसमें प्रेजेंट होते हैं mucilaginous canals और vascular bundles, और जो vascular bundles की अरेंजमेंट की शेप है दैट इज inverted omega shape. So this section shows the TS of Rachis. It is the outermost covering is epidermis followed by hypodermis जिसमें outer 2 to 4 layers होती हैं chlorenchymatous cells की and inner 4 to 6 layers are of sclerenchymatous cells which provide strength or mechanical support. Then inner to this is ground tissue which is made up of parenchyma which contains the mucilaginous cells and vascular bundles. So vascular bundles in case of Rachis shows unique arrangement that is inverted omega shape arrangement of vascular bundles. So a Greek letter omega है like this one. So ये जो arrangement है vascular bundles की that is inverted omega shape in case of Rachis of Cycas. So vascular bundles are arranged in the shape of inverted Greek letter omega. Each vascular bundle is conjoint, collateral and dark and diploxylic. Diploxylic, that is, it consists of centripetal and centrifugal xylem. Centripetal xylem, like in this diagram we can see here. Here the protoxylem is towards center and metaxylem is towards the outer side. So this type of xylem is known as centripetal xylem and this condition is also known as end-dark condition. While in case of centrifugal xylem, metaxylem occupy the central region and protoxylem is towards the outer side and this condition is also known as the exarch condition. So vascular bundles vary in structure at different levels of Rachis. So जो vascular bundle की arrangement होती है वो vary करती है from the Rachis base to the apex. So it is the unique feature in case of Cycas Rachis. So vascular bundles at the base of Rachis. Firstly, so vascular bundles are end-dark at the base. It means centrifugal xylem is well developed, protoxylem faces toward the center showing end-dark condition and centripetal xylem is not developed. इसमें जो centrifugal xylem होता है base में that is well developed, इसमें protoxylem face करता है towards center and metaxylem towards outer side और इस condition को कहा जाता है end-dark condition भी, while centripetal xylem is not developed at the base. Then in the middle portion, the condition mesorrhagic is mesorrhagic. Here centripetal and centrifugal xylems are present showing diploxylic condition. जो middle portion है उसमें दोनों ही xylem present होते हैं, centripetal as well as centrifugal xylem. Then exarch at the apex. जो apex है वहाँ पे condition होती है exarch, that is centripetal xylem is well developed, triangular and exarch. Centrifugal xylem is exarch means when protoxylem is towards outer side and metaxylem occupies the central portion. So this condition is known as exarch condition. Here centrifugal xylem is much reduced. Apex में जो centrifugal xylem है वो reduced होता है and is present in the form of two patches और दो patches की form present होता है lying one on each side of the protoxylem elements of the centripetal xylem due to twisting of Rachis. So this is diagram which shows first one is at the base where the centrifugal xylem is well developed. Here the centrifugal xylem is well developed while it is in the middle portion. So diagram B shows the middle portion. यहाँ पे जो centripetal xylem है और centrifugal xylem है, दोनों ही xylem well developed होते हैं. While in case of apex region में जो centrifugal xylem है that is poorly developed और दो patches की form में present होता है, and this centripetal xylem is well developed. So this is the arrangement of vascular bundles which varies in Cycas rachis from base to the apex of Cycas rachis. Next comes the internal structure of leaflet. So this is the section of transverse section of leaflet. It shows the outermost epidermis followed by sclerenchymatous hypodermis, and this hypodermis is followed by the mesophyll tissue, which is differentiated into palisade and spongy parenchyma. Then it consists of the transfusion tissue that helps in lateral conduction of water, and the central portion is occupied by the vascular bundle. So the leaflet of Cycas is dorsiventral, means it shows dorsal and ventral surfaces, and hypostomatic. Hypo means lower, stomatic means stomata, so it bears stomata on the lower surfaces of leaf. In transverse section, the leaflet can be differentiated into swollen midrib, this one, and the two lateral wings, or in structure कहा जाता है wings. So outermost covering is epidermis. It is the outermost single layer made up of squarish thin walled cells, and the upper epidermis is complete, whereas the lower epidermis is interrupted by these sunken stomatas. Interrupted by several sunken stomatas, which is a xerophytic feature. The upper and lower epidermis is covered by thick cuticle. दोनों ही epidermis के बाहर की जो covering है, that is by. Next comes hypodermis. It is followed by epidermis, and it is thick walled sclerenchymatous, made up of sclerenchymatous cells. It is single layered in the region of blade. जो blade वाला region है, wings वाला region, उसमें single layered होती है, but it is in the middle region or midrib region, it is 2 to 3 layered thick, and it helps in checking the rate of transpiration and protect the tissue from excessive heat. So इसका जो function है hypodermis का, ये protect करता है from the excessive water loss. So in this picture we can see here the outermost is epidermis. This is followed by this hypodermis, जो कि midrib region में ज़्यादा thick होती है as compared to the wings. Wings में ये single layer present. Next comes mesophyll. Mesophyll it is present below the hypodermis, or it is differentiated into palisade and spongy parenchyma. So in this diagram we can see here जो hypodermis is इसको follow किया जाता है mesophyll tissue के द्वारा, और जो mesophyll tissue है it is differentiated into palisade and spongy parenchyma. Palisade parenchyma consists of compactly arranged large elongated cells without intercellular spaces, while जो lower epidermis है इसके ऊपर present होते हैं spongy parenchymatous cells which are with intercellular spaces. So a well-developed mesophyll tissue is present in the Cycas leaflet. It is differentiated into palisade tissue and spongy parenchyma. Palisade tissue is present in the form of continuous layer below the sclerenchymatous hypodermis. जो sclerenchymatous hypodermis है उसके नीचे ये present होती है, and spongy parenchyma present only on the wings. Wings में present होता है these wings portions, and it is present directly above the lower epidermis, और lower epidermis के ऊपर की तरफ ये यहाँ पे present होता है, and it is made up of loosely arranged cells, parenchymatous cells जो कि loosely arranged होते हैं, and they are filled with chloroplast, and these cells have many intercellular spaces and filled with air. So ये जो spongy parenchymatous tissue है, they contain number of intercellular spaces. Next, gymnosperm leaves have some special type of conducting tissue जिसको कहा जाता है transfusion tissue. So this tissue is present in the leaflet. It is of two types. One is primary transfusion tissue, other is secondary transfusion tissue. So in the wing region of this leaflet there is presence of secondary or accessory transfusion tissue, and in the central portion there is primary transfusion tissue, and this tissue helps in radial conduction of water, or we can say lateral conduction of water. So it is a group of tracheal cells directly in contact with the centripetal xylem and are present in the leaflet. So gymnosperms के leaflet की ये special feature है, they contain this transfusion tissue and it is called primary transfusion tissue. So leaflet में जो tissue present होता है उसको कहा जाता है primary transfusion tissue. But there are some cells in of this tissue which are short and wide with reticulate border pits and pitted walls. They have some little exchange of water between the tracheal cells. Then there are some cells which are long, colorless, elongated, lignified tracheal cells of the transfusion tissue which are present on the either side of midrib between the palisade and spongy parenchyma. So कुछ एक cells होते हैं which are present in this wing region और ये प्रेजेंट होते हैं पैलिसेड और स्पॉन्जी पैरेन्कामा के बीच में एंड दिस टिश्यू फॉर्म्स द secondary or accessory transfusion tissue and these cells run parallel to the leaf surface of the midrib to the margin और ये जो cells हैं ये run करते हैं parallelly to the leaf surface from midrib to the margin, midrib से margin तक और this zone is known as accessory transfusion tissue or secondary transfusion tissue or hydrosterome or radial parenchyma and its main function is in lateral conduction of water. So primary as well as secondary transfusion tissue helps in lateral conduction of water, means lateral side पे ये water को conduct करने में help करता है. The next comes the central portion which consists of the vascular bundles. So a central portion of this leaflet is or midrib region we can say of this leaflet is occupied by the vascular tissue which consists of xylem and phloem. So जो इसमें xylem और phloem होता है that is covered by the vascular tissue is covered by sclerenchymatous bundle sheath. इसके बाहर जो covering present होती है this is called bundle sheath और xylem condition इसमें होती है diploxylic. It means it contains the xylem towards the dorsal surface, जो ऊपर वाला surface है xylem उसकी तरफ present होगा and phloem towards the ventral surface, towards the lower side. And the centripetal xylem is well developed. It means the protoxylem faces towards the center or metaxylem peripheral region में होता है and there are two patches of centrifugal xylem also. So a single large vascular bundle is present in the midrib region of the leaflet and it is surrounded by a sclerenchymatous bundle sheath. इसके बाहर bundle sheath present होती है. The vascular bundles कैसे होते हैं इसमें conjoint, collateral, open and diploxylic. Open means this xylem and phloem also contains a cambium ring or cambium layer in between the xylem and phloem. So xylem is present towards the dorsal surface or upper surface while the phloem is present towards the ventral surface or lower surface we can say. Xylem and phloem are separated by a non-functional strip of cambium. So इसमें जो cambium की strip present होती है that is non-functional and centrifugal xylem is represented by two small groups on either side of protoxylem. So जो ये protoxylem present होता है centripetal xylem का इसकी दोनों तरफ present है centrifugal xylem. The remaining space of vascular bundle is filled with thin-walled parenchymatous cells. और जो इसके अलावा जो space है vascular bundle का that is occupied by thin-walled parenchymatous cells. So this is all about the leaflet of Cycas. So this was all about this student discussion. We will cover this Cycas reproduction and life cycle in second part. So this was all about this first part. If you have any questions, queries and any suggestions, you can give it in comment section. Thank you. Have a great day.